It's another beautiful Sunday in the 808 state, and it's time for public access programming. I'm Johnny Merrill here on our Hawaii Media Family radio stations. Now, we're also available on Kauai, and you can pick us up anywhere at hawaiistream.fm in the Live 365 app. All right, so this morning we're going to be talking with another member from the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. That would be Policy Director Malia Hill, and it's an interesting topic, but it is gaining some momentum, let's put it that way, because we've all been there. I imagine we've all been there. Have you ever been ticketed for jaywalking here in Honolulu or just anywhere in general throughout the state? If so, you wouldn't be alone. Now, thousands of people are ticketed in Hawaii every year for crossing outside the crosswalk, entering the crosswalk too soon, entering the crosswalk too late. That's news to me, or just even skipping the crosswalk altogether. But why is that the case? So to answer those questions to the best of her ability, Policy Director Malia Hill joins me this morning to talk about this interesting issue. Good morning to you, Malia.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we have this bill moving in the state legislature that would decriminalize jaywalking in certain circumstances. Now, what exactly would this bill do, and why are lawmakers debating it in the first place?
Yeah, so the bill number is SB 2630. And, people say it legalizes jaywalking, but as you noted, that's not really accurate. What the law does, it just says that police shouldn't stop you or ticket you for crossing the street in a way that violates the jaywalking laws. The jaywalking laws are just about, crossing against the don't walk sign or the countdown timer, crossing outside of a crosswalk, walking on the wrong side of the crosswalk, or, stepping off the curb suddenly. That's what you can get cited for. And this bill, what it does, it just says, if you're reasonably careful, so there's no risk of collision with a vehicle, or, you don't even make a car slow down or stop for you, and you're more than 200 feet away from a crosswalk. So basically, in normal language, if there are no cars around and you're being careful and responsible about crossing the street, you don't get hit with a jaywalking ticket for it. That's all. It's called freedom to walk, and it's kind of a growing issue across the country. Not just because it's common sense, but also because there's really no evidence that jaywalking tickets make anything safer. And there's a lot of evidence that they're really overused and that police are just a little too zealous about enforcing jaywalking.
All right, so how about let's bring it here locally. Let's talk about the ticket issue. Just how many people, Malia, get ticketed every year for jaywalking here in Hawaii?
Yeah, that's a really surprising answer to that. The Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice, they just did a study of jaywalking citations in Hawaii. The name of their study is called Freedom to Walk, I think. And what they found is that Hawaii is really over the top when it comes to handing out jaywalking citations. They looked at 6 years between 2018 and 2023, and in that time, there were 30,168 jaywalking citations given out, like an average about 5,000 a year. In 2018, they actually gave out about 8,000 jaywalking citations. And, I told you before what a citation was for. About half of these tickets were given for crossing outside of crosswalks. Another 46% were like crossing on the countdown timer once the timer starts, or the don't walk sign. And about 5% were for just suddenly leaving the curb. And they even break down the geography of these citations. So 99% are given out on Oahu by the Honolulu Police Department, and 78% of them are given out in urban Honolulu, like between about Kaimuki and Kalihi. They even managed to figure out like the streets that get you jaywalking tickets the most. Specific intersections have more tickets than other places. Like Hotel Street in Chinatown was 1,316 tickets in that 1 year, 2018. That's like 16% of all the tickets are on Hotel Street. And then King Street had about 11% of the tickets. And then Kalakaua and Waikiki had about 7%.
They've really lessened their enforcement on Hotel Street. I know for a fact. I remember 2018, yeah. You had police out in force looking for jaywalkers back then. So I can see that number being that high, definitely. But I don't see the presence anymore, and that it is a priority for them anymore, especially with the crime uptick in downtown. Not sure about elsewhere, though. Does this stack up against, how does it stack up against other states as far as jaywalking tickets in other cities?
Actually a really good question because it gives some perspective. We don't really know. Is that a lot? Is it a little? Turns out it's enormous. Hawaii isn't just like a little bit higher when it comes to jaywalking tickets. It's much, much higher than other states and cities. So in the 6-year period, Hawaii gives out about 30,000 tickets. Washington State in the same period, the entirety of Washington State, 9,800. So if Hawaii is giving out an average of about 5,000 jaywalking tickets a year, Washington State is giving out about 428 a year. And that's before you even adjust for the population. So when you adjust Hawaii is actually kind of a smaller population. So, per capita, what is the deal? For every 100,000 citizens, Hawaii gives out 349 citations for jaywalking. And for every 100,000 citizens, Washington State gives out six jaywalking tickets. And New York City is about the same. Jacksonville, Florida, Sacramento, California, they're maybe closer to 50, but that's still, way less than 350. If you've ever been to New York City or Seattle, Honolulu, and you feel like Honolulu is way more likely to overpolice jaywalking, that's because it is by about 5,000%.
Wow. So it doesn't really seem like it's affecting the country roads then. That wouldn't apply to any of this. There's no need to even apply something like that. It's just dealing with the urban core.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not. That's where nearly all of these tickets are giving out. There's a handful being given out other places, but by and large, we're talking about urban core here.
Okay. So some of the objections, you can see them coming. You've heard, will compromise pedestrian safety. In fact, one person said that if Hawaii has the second highest pedestrian fatality rate now, maybe it's because the police need to issue more jaywalking tickets. What's the case?
Yeah. I have heard that. I totally understand why people are worried, but you have to call out the faulty logic here. It is true that Hawaii, at least in some studies, is the second most dangerous state for pedestrians. It has been up there no matter which study you're looking at. But it's also true that we hand out far more jaywalking tickets. So if jaywalking tickets were the solution to pedestrian danger and fatality, then Hawaii would be the safest state for pedestrians since we give out so many tickets. But it's not. All those tickets that we've been giving out for years have not made Hawaii any safer. In fact, globally speaking, if we go outside the United States, the cities that have the lowest pedestrian death rates, these tend to be, Scandinavia, Northern Europe, Western Europe. They don't even have jaywalking laws. So there's not this connection between safety and jaywalking laws, which really makes sense when you think about it. Because, think about when you're trying to cross the street. You're not thinking about, could I get a jaywalking ticket? That's not the uppermost thing in your head. It's, I hope I don't get hit by a car. That's your main motivation. So jaywalking tickets aren't really a deterrent. It's not getting hit by a car that's the deterrent. And when they've done these studies, they also find that a lot of the jaywalking tickets end up being issued to homeless people and minorities and the poor. So it really raises the question about who it's for.
I was at an intersection just ready to push the button, to get the thing moving, the countdown going. I looked to my right. I was on Merchant Street. And just as I was looking to my left, it wasn't a car coming by, whizzing along Merchant. It was a monowheel going about 25 miles an hour. So if I just stepped out a little bit, I would have been clipped, and the individual would have been on the side, on the pavement too. So it's not just cars we have to watch out for anymore. It's electric bikes.
No, it's not. It's all of the cars, the mopeds, the monowheels. But it's not really about that. I mean, you still have to watch. No matter what happens with this bill, you still have to watch out for what's coming. Yeah,
you just keep your head in the swivel in all instances these days anyways, and this is just one other instance. You look left, you look right. That's what we were taught. Even in a car, you look left, you look right before you pull on out. And you have to really look at the vehicle before you cross, even though you might have a green light. But nonetheless, it's all about common sense. So personal liability, that's always big here. Would this bill allow pedestrians to walk into a busy highway without any personal liability in case their action were to cause an accident? That seems a little out of the possibility, but nonetheless a question here.
Yeah, I mean, for real, if someone is just walking into busy traffic, again, there's a lot more going on there than can be addressed with a jaywalking ticket. But some people have brought this up in testimony about the bill, and it's a common misconception, and even call it slightly misinformation about the bill, because not only does this bill have all these caveats where you have to be, a certain amount of distance from a crosswalk, and you have to take reasonable care, and you can't cross when a car is coming, and you can't make the car slow down or anything like that. It has to be super safe. But it also explicitly says in the bill that nothing here changes the duty of care on the part of the pedestrian or a driver. So none of the liability changes. You can't just walk into traffic. No one, pedestrians, drivers, no one gets more liability. Really, the only thing that changes with this bill is that the police cannot give you a ticket for crossing against the light or crossing without a walk sign if there are no cars around.
Mm-hmm. Malia, have any other states or cities done something like this? And if so, what have been the results? You've seen massive increases in pedestrian deaths. We went over that, but how about for the other states?
Well, this effort to decriminalize jaywalking, it's kind of a growing trend, as I mentioned before. And there's a lot of these freedom to walk bills that we've seen in Hawaii, we've seen them elsewhere. So, the first place it passed, I think, is in Virginia in 2020, and then more recently, California, Nevada, in Anchorage, Alaska, and Kansas City, Missouri. And I want to say New York City and Washington State are also looking at it. So that's it's a new topic, sort of brought on by people researching, what is the use of jaywalking laws. So there's not a lot of data yet, but I can tell you that, since one of the oldest ones is Virginia, they decriminalized jaywalking in 2020, and it has had no, effect really on pedestrian injuries or deaths. I can tell you, as someone who spends a lot of time in Virginia, I don't think people even realized that the law changed. That's how little an impact it made.
And I could see people with, whether it gets to be wintry and or it's raining really hard and you're sitting there waiting for the light and there's no cars coming and you're getting poured on, or it's heavily snowing, or it's freezing outside. You want to get to your destination. So those are the instances where people say, hey, it's time to walk. There's no cars coming. I'm going to use my judgment to walk across the street. So I can see this working in that fashion. So as you said, you live in Virginia for quite some time. Malia, what would you say to those who are concerned that this would represent a loss of revenue? Because we always had the quota thing going on and are thinking about what the police are out there to get their quota on. So how would this affect revenue?
That is a good question, because with so many tickets, you kind of think, well, that must be what it is. It must be some sort of push for revenue. But ironically speaking, from the point of view of revenue, this is not a good jaywalking. It's not a good moneymaker. You'd think that with so many tickets, there'd be public funds, that we'd be paying for something important. But metaphorically speaking, jaywalking tickets are like one of those big blockbuster movies that come out in the summer, and they cost a ton, and then the studio doesn't even make the money back. Mm-hmm. That's what jaywalking tickets are. Appleseed looked at it, and they figured out that in those 6 years, all those jaywalking tickets represented $3.8 million in fees assessed for jaywalking tickets, and out of that $3.8 million, they collected $854,000 about. And then meanwhile, it costs $1.8 million to enforce the jaywalking laws. If you look at, time spent and all the, administrative costs and so on and so forth, and, officers and that kind of thing. So they basically lost almost $1 million on jaywalking tickets.
That's
so they don't even pay for themselves.
No, not even close. Policy Director Malia Hill from Grassroot Institute, and you can catch him at grassrootinstitute.org. Did any of this impetus come from possibly, because I think it's been a success of the diagonal crossings when you have all the cars stop and then the pedestrians in Waikiki, this is where they first rolled it out, Ala Moana Boulevard, I believe, Hobron and Kalakaua Avenue, and I believe Royal Hawaiian, that section. Is that spurred this and moved this along? Is that part of the thought process? And it seems like that's working, and I can see that expanding in other areas. How has this played into it, if it has at all?
Well, there's two separate things going on. There's this push for, increasing safety just in general, mm-hmm. Road safety, pedestrian safety. And that's, something that the Hawaii legislature, you're right, has been more interested in, and that, different cities are experimenting in. And then at the same time, I think it raises these questions. And so groups like Appleseed and other organizations, they start and obviously grassroots, they start looking at the data and they go, so what about these laws that are supposed to be about safety? Are they really safe? Or is that completely unrelated? And I think that's kind of what happens at the same time that we're trying to, make things more safe. We're also going, so what is it? What does this do? Is this jaywalking, citations? What are they for then? They're not to make people safe if they don't have it make a difference, if the data doesn't show it. And then, on top of that, when they do that research, they find out, well, actually, not only does it not make anyone more safe, but they tend to, jaywalking tickets tend to, for some reason, center on the poor, the disadvantaged, minorities. I want to say that when New York City looked at it, they found that 90% of the jaywalking tickets in New York City went to Blacks and Hispanics. They got 90% of them. Somewhere else, I want to say it was in Washington State, it tended to be homeless people. So it really raised a lot of questions. So at the same time that you're trying to make the streets safer, you're also asking, what is the point of jaywalking tickets? And I think those two things are happening at the same time in the legislature.
Yeah, it's all about making things work better, functionality, and they're looking at ways to do this thing. And then these days, people, time is sped up with the caffeinated society we have right now. Nobody wants to wait, that long to get across the street anymore. And if we can do it safely without worrying about a jaywalking ticket, that would be a plus. Malia, anything else you'd like to add before we say aloha?
Oh, sure. I guess I want to say that there's a lot of ways to look at the jaywalking issue. For some people, it's really about, restraining an overzealous police force and, just too much government. And, for some people, it's about, well, we need to change these because it's about standing up for the little guy and the people who are unfairly targeted, people who don't have cars and walk and, that kind of thing. For some people, it's just, hey, walking is good. We should encourage people to walk and not, just kind of be hammering down on them with jaywalking tickets constantly. But it isn't really this jaywalking decriminalization effort. It isn't about, there's no question of safety involved. Obviously, no one's encouraging anyone to run into traffic. No one's trying to put more pressure on drivers. That's all a myth. It's just common sense. If you've ever sat there on a corner where, no cars in sight and you just want to get home and it's late at night and it's just waiting and waiting and waiting for the light to change so you can cross, going, why can't I just cross? I know how to cross the street. I've known since I was 5 years old. It's just common sense. And I think that's something that, everyone should be able to agree on.
So this is in the Senate, right? And then if they move it, it's going to go down to the House and it'll be discussed and then eventually passed on to become law. So how many more readings does it have to go in the Senate?
It started in the Senate and it has crossed over to the House now. And the first House committee, which is transportation, has heard it already and passed it. Okay. So from there, it has to go to House Judiciary. Okay. And then from there, conference committee, assuming it passes the House entirely, then it would go to conference committee and then maybe, hopefully, to the governor's desk.
And what was the public input, if there was any so far?
Well, it's been interesting. There are a lot of groups that have been very much in favor of it. So Grassroots Institute has been testifying for it. The Office of the Public Defender testified for it. There's various coalitions about, healthy living and getting active, Hawaii Bicycling League. Obviously, the Appleseed Center has also testified for it. And then against it, obviously, you're going to have the police and the Department of Transportation.
So there, you mentioned the Hawaii Bicycling League. So they're also bringing that up for people on bikes, that they can, quote unquote, jaywalk with their bike if they feel and deem it safe?
Yeah, I think it's really just about it's safe to get out, it's safe to walk, let people walk safely, let people use their common sense to walk safely.
Okay. All right. Well, that wraps it up. Interesting topic. You may think we'd be discussing jaywalking laws, but here we are, or eradicating them. And here we are in 2024, and we'll see if indeed that does take place down the road. Malia Hill, Policy Director from Grassroots Institute of Hawaii, grassrootsinstitute.org, for more on their their great work that they do there, and all the fine employees and staff over there at Grassroots Institute. Well, Leah, thanks so much for joining us, and we hope to be talking to you again soon about a very important topic.
Thank you.